dear Sachin, Raghav and Ravi and all others. I have a little problem with the throat, so you have to bear with. Otherwise, also the voice is not all that melodious, but at least there is an explainable reason for this kind of thing. I must thank the organizers for having invited me here and touch upon the issue which is so serious, has been serious in the past, and if you see the trend of the seriousness, it is at increase. The education, particularly the technical education, as you know, has been very rightly and directly related to the contribution to the society in terms of the very basic transformation of resources into services and the products. The other disciplines of education, such as literature or other such kind of things, had been doing their contribution to the society in slightly different way, where probably the term employability does not get that kind of space as it happens. Rather, the degree of correlation between the technical education and then the contribution of these graduates to deliver the goods and services is a very old and serious phenomenon. What has happened in the recent past, particularly in the context of our country, that a lot of things have started springing up with different magnitude, with different wavelength and at different frequencies, which is perhaps very natural to happen. The overall synchronization of the education, the information, related information, and the ability of the graduates to contribute to the basic resource transformation has been reasonably under the question. What it probably implies is that we have very rapidly grown in terms of the information and information of various kinds. Using that information or the related technology of information, what we call information technology, to the various spheres of the transformation process, be it health, education itself. Education has a very different kind of role to play. It is key to the growth of information technology. While it gives birth to the information technology, it also uses the information technology for its own growth, unlike probably other disciplines in the society. It is very, very what you call interesting phenomenon that giving birth to something and nurturing it, growing it, and then for your own furthering, you depend on what you have just born out of yourself. Now, despite the fact that so much of closeness with this baby and your requirements, that means in education, there is a visible skewness, there is a visible what you call ill distribution of the information, and this is why I guess the organizers of this today's function, they visualize asymmetry in information, and balancing the information now needs some further skills which are not purely technological. They probably are a little bit more of managerial in nature. So, and hence a confluence of technology and management is just very natural to emerge, and perhaps this is why they term it as techno managerial. Now, this is one side of the story. The other aspect is about the role of the graduates going through the technical education I would right now focus on, to be able to contribute in the process of transformation, or in other words, what you probably may like to call it in the form of some abstract noun, and that is employable or employability, or name by anything. And whenever we encounter an abstract noun, the definition becomes reasonably complex, unlike other form of the words where it is quantitatively measurable, whereas this particular phenomena has its own strange characteristic. And this strange characteristic emerges because of having a very tensorial nature of the meaning of the employment and then employability, and that too it is so dynamic with the time that something which is employable today may turn out somewhat different tomorrow. So it's not a question of being employable at time t. Perhaps the theme of today's discussion is employability as a function of time, and probably measuring something which is such kind of, typically having a very spectral in nature and all kind of harmonics. Just you can, I hope you are getting the points of very high order, and then trying to analyze it is definitely a very challenging task which the group has undertaken. And I will just put my views on this employability and the gap, what you say. That gap essentially indicates that what is needed is not there. That's what is the meaning of the gap. Anywhere, if there is a gap, you desire something, there is a specification, there is some kind of level at which you want to set the system to operate, but your actual performance is at somewhat different level. If this performance is below the specification, then the gap becomes serious. And if it happens to be above the specification, then of course that's a very, very happy situation, which is not the point of discussion today. Gap is a negative gap. I think that's without saying it goes, saying that we do not have the ability in the graduates who, again, would be able to contribute or are found to be contributing to the, I will simply say, transformation of the resources for the good of the society ultimately. Now, to reduce this particular gap, which is to be felt by all, educational institutions, the industry people, and there are some, which is again a different kind of thing which has emerged over the last decade. It's some who only specialize in addressing the issue of gap, and probably another kind of, call it industry, or another kind of activity which has occupied the human mind, the space in the human mind is to just study the employability. And perhaps you would remember that there has been a lot of economic model of typical supply and demand over the nearly a century, more than that. And another kind of supply and demand, and that is the graduates, has not been well studied as much as like the supply and demand of petrol or other kind of products, textile or agriculture products. But this particular produce, which is of the graduates, and here the study of the supply and demand, or that phenomenon is different than the wheat and other kind of things, has been very recently addressed, and I guess one of the very recent Nobel Prize has been given to study this particular, what I should say, strange relationship between the supply and demand, unlike, as I said, other kind of physical goods with which we are quite familiar. And the educational institutions, many of us, I belong to that particular group, probably think that whatever maybe I had studied as a syllabus and reproduces, because I probably cannot go beyond that, what I have studied already, and just almost satisfy ourselves that, well, this is what is to be done, making the syllabus sort of static, not really responding to the changing. We produce the technologies, technical education, but responding to the changing technology in order to make our graduates who could use that particular technology, if you see, we fail miserably in that particular case. Which is, examples are many. We must have talked and done a lot, very popular word like nanotechnology. But to say that how many we have produced who are going to take the technology forward for the purpose of certain applications, that number definitely is not matching with the other kind of efforts in terms of the scientific developments, etc., that we are doing. And hence, one such kind of issue is that understanding by the people in the education, the application of the technology and scientific discoveries towards the needs of the society. At the same time, just look at the responsibility. Is to power the graduate, is to energize the graduate, where the life cycle of the education is not 5 days, that he is employable and that's it, and then after a year or 2 years or 5 years is basically done. So while at the gate, at the time of awarding the degree, you are expected to make the person immediately employable, and also imagine the employers don't know what they are going to do, but the institutions are supposed to keep that employability for the rest of the life as far as the graduating student is concerned. I think this must be understood, that immediate employability and the life cycle of the activities which the educational institutions are carrying out, they need to be correlated properly. The role of industry has tremendously changed over the years. Many of them were quite satisfied with making and selling the things and probably making some profits, and hardly caring for any sensitivities in the consumers. Probably there wasn't any sensitivity amongst the consumers, maybe. But of late, I think things, as you know, have changed. They have put a pressure, and good pressure, on the industry themselves, they realize it, and also naturally it has to have the impact on educational processes. What is really needed, which has been said, I'm sure, several times, uncountable number of times, and that is what is called industry-academia interaction. I'm sure the literature and the paper consumed on this particular issue